Did you know that in the 19th century, there was a woman king in Enugu-Ezike? In today's Igbo North local government area of Enugu State. She was the only woman king in the history of the Igbo people during colonial Nigeria. This is the true story of a young woman in Enugu State, a woman warrant chief in Igbo land who was crowned as king by the colonial administrators who imposed leadership on the Igbos when they misunderstood the Igbo concept of government and presumed that the Igbos did not have an organized leadership system. The woman who became a man was the first and ever Igbo king who was a woman and who ruled tyrannically, marrying wives for herself, taking other people's wives, and making masquerades an abomination in Igbo land, since masquerades are exclusively for men. A long time ago, in the late 19th century, in Enugu-Ezike, a community in Igbo land, a young girl was born to a man whose name was Ubabi Aibi and his beloved wife, Aneku Ame. The man was a farmer and a palm wine tapper, while his wife was also a farmer and a trader in Umuida community in Enugu-Ezike. Together, the excited couple and new parents named their beloved and only daughter, Ahebi Ubabe. Ahebi grew into a young, hardworking and strong woman, alongside her two brothers. Along the line, her parents sent her to go live with her mother's family in Unadu, a community in Igbo South local government area of Enugu State in Nigeria. After a short period, Ahebi returned to Umuida, but little did she know that her return to her hometown would mark the beginning of another chapter in her life. One fateful day, the soothsayer of the community, otherwise known as the chief priest, convened the meeting of all men and women in the community. The villagers were directed to gather at the village square following the receipt of a divine message from the deity of Umuida community. After the villagers had convened at the village square, the chief priest delivered the instructions of the gods to the community. According to him, the deity has decreed that it is prohibited for Ahebi, who is now a young woman, from ever getting married to a man throughout her lifetime. In addition, the deity commanded that Ahebi submit herself as the wife of the gods in punishment for her father's sins. Hearing this, Ahebi's mother protested, but the chief priest warned that there would be grievous consequences if Ahebi failed to comply with the instructions of the deity. Following the turnout of things, Ahebi, not wanting to marry the deity, ran away from Umuida community with the help of her mother. She wandered until she found herself in Igala land, in today's Kogi State in Nigeria. Exhausted, hungry and thirsty, Ahebi decided to rest for a while in the deep forest, and she fell into a deep sleep. While she was asleep, a hunter noticed Ahebi and approached her, and after listening to her story, he decided to take her along to his house. Unfortunately, when they arrived at the hunter's house, the hunter's wife refused to accept Ahebi into their home. Confused, Ahebi continued on her aimless journey, and that was how she encountered the colonial masters who facilitated her return to Enugu-Ezike, her place of birth. During her first exile, Ahebi became a commercial sex worker and used this form of work to her advantage by aligning herself with powerful men such as the ruler of the Igala kingdom and the British colonial officials. Along her travels, Ahebi learned to speak numerous languages such as Igala, Nupe, and Pidgin English. Her success and independence helped to redefine sex work in Igbo culture from servitude to a voluntary profession. Her line of work and linguistic skills gave her access to the Ata of Igala and the British divisional officer, who not only facilitated her return to Enugu-Ezike, but supported her claim to the office of headman, warrant chief, and later the king of the community. Ahebi's reign began a few months after she returned to Igbo land from exile. The early 20th century was a period of the British incursion into Igbo land, and Ahebi used this to her benefit by leading the British forces into Enugu-Ezike, her hometown. Ahebi was the only person in her village able to speak with the British. As a reward for her support, the British invaders installed her as the village headman. She replaced the aged headman who was unable to communicate with the British as at then. Due to her efficiency and continued loyalty, she was elevated to the post of warrant chief, a feat that was contrary to the British policy of female political exclusion in colonial Nigeria. The British district officer W.H. Lloyd said Ahebi was a lady of influence and power. She was intelligent and of a quiet disposition, and when she did speak, it was usually to the point and sensible. Ahebi Ugbabi became the king of Enugu-Ezike with the aid of the Ata of Igala, whose power spread to northern Igbo territory, upsetting the gendered politics in her culture. She performed female masculinities as ruler, and she surpassed all male political hierarchy and authority. Although Ahebi commanded the respect of her people, she planted seeds of resentment by recruiting forced labor and imposing census and a British tax, even though the Igbo culture did not allow for humans to be counted. This census caused the women's riots in southern Igbo land. At first, Ahebi easily crossed whatever resistance existed to her kingship because of her British backing. Ahebi amassed wealth and power, but ultimately fell from grace when the extent of her multiple gender and power transgressions became too much for the community. She overreached in her ambition and violated traditions more by attending a spiritual masquerade ritual with her mask, a ritual that was strictly for men. Following this development, the male elders and Ahebi went to court to settle the case, but unfortunately, the British sided with the male elders, undermining Ahebi's role. Ahebi Ugbabi cultivated an aura of mysticism to solidify an image of an all-powerful rule. She used pre-colonial traditions to push this mysticism and therefore power. She also used this to augment her gender to effectively make herself king. Ahebi further asserted herself as a man by marrying multiple wives, many of whom were runaways from abusive husbands. She also had multiple servants who served her. These wives would bear children to continue Ahebi's name. Sadly, before Ahebi died, she performed her burial rites. She did not trust that her society would accord her a befitting burial. She performed the rites in such a glorious manner that her society would never forget that an incredible being such as herself had lived. Her living funeral included gunfire, animal sacrifice, and music of remembrance. Ahebi died in 1948. Although she was a woman, she was buried according to the local customs for burying men. Regardless of her fears of not being properly commemorated, she is worshipped today as a goddess in her mother's hometown and is mentioned in numerous Enugu-Ezike songs and parables.